All right, so we're ready to jump into some serious NBA analysis today. 5 games, all with different storylines, all with some serious talent on display.
Yeah, this is a really interesting set of matchups. Gives us a chance to really dig into some of the trends we're seeing in the league right now.
And we have this welcome to today.pdf document that lays out all the details, but we're going to go way beyond just like who won and who lost. We're diving into the why and the how.
Exactly. We're going to talk about the key plays, the breakout performances, and what all of this means for these teams moving forward. The kind of stuff that real fans want to know.
Let's start with the Suns and the Bulls, a 127 to 121 final score, which tells you right away this was an offensive battle. What stood out to you about how the Suns approached this game offensively?
Well, first of all, their pace was relentless. They were constantly pushing the ball up the court, trying to catch the Bulls off guard. And when they settled into their half-court offense, they were just so efficient, especially with their pick-and-roll game. Yeah, I mean, Devin Booker with 35 points, he was just on fire. But it wasn't just the volume, it was the variety of ways he was scoring.
Right, he was hitting those pull-up jumpers, getting to the rim, drawing fouls. He had the whole arsenal going. And then you factor in Chris Paul, 12 assists, really orchestrating the offense, finding the open man, making sure everyone was involved.
It felt like every possession for the Suns had a purpose. Now, the Bulls, they didn't just roll over. Zach LaVine kept them in it with 30 points of his own. How were they able to stay competitive against that kind of offensive firepower?
Zach LaVine, he was incredible. He was hitting some really tough shots, keeping the Bulls within striking distance. And they did a decent job on the offensive boards, getting second chance points, trying to keep pace with the Suns. But ultimately, it wasn't quite enough.
And it seemed like in those final minutes, the Suns really clamped down defensively, which isn't something you always associate with a team that scores 127 points.
Yeah, that's a good point. They turned up the intensity on defense, got some key stops, forced a couple of turnovers. It shows they're not just a one-dimensional team. They can win in different ways.
All right, let's move on to a game that was a little closer. The Kings edging out the Cavaliers 123 to 119. When you see a score like that, you know it came down to the wire.
Yeah.
What were the deciding factors in this one?
In a close game like that, it often comes down to who can execute better under pressure. And in this case, it was the Kings. De'Aaron Fox, he was just clutch, hitting big shots down the stretch, showing a real killer instinct.
Yeah, 28 points for Fox, including some really key baskets late in the game. And you can't overlook Domantas Sabonis' 15 rebounds. Absolute beast on the boards.
Sabonis was huge, especially in a game like this where every possession matters. He was giving the Kings second chances, controlling the paint. The Cavaliers had a hard time matching his physicality.
The Cavaliers weren't slouches, though. Darius Garland had 27 points and 8 assists, really kept them in it. What were they doing well to stay competitive with the Kings?
Well, Garland was fantastic. He was breaking down the Kings' defense, creating opportunities for himself and his teammates. Evan Mobley had some nice moments defensively with 3 blocks. But ultimately, they couldn't quite keep up with the Kings in the fourth quarter.
It felt like the Kings were able to speed up the game in the fourth, get some easy baskets in transition, and that might have been the difference. This win feels like a bit of a statement for the Kings, showing they can hang with some of the better teams in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see if they can build on this, maintain this level of play against top competition as the season goes on.
All right, let's talk about the Lakers and the Nuggets. This one wasn't quite as close. The Lakers winning 120 to 108. What was the story of this game?
This was a LeBron James masterclass. 32 points, doing it all. Scoring, passing, defending. When he's playing like that, the Lakers are incredibly tough to beat.
Yeah, and you had Anthony Davis doing his thing too. 25 points and 12 rebounds. That inside-outside duo is just so difficult to defend.
Exactly. Davis forces teams to collapse on him in the paint, which opens up opportunities for other players. And his rebounding was crucial, especially against a team like the Nuggets that relies heavily on Nikola Jokic's offensive rebounding.
Jokic still put up decent numbers, 29 points and 10 rebounds. Jamal Murray had 22, but it felt like the Lakers were just in control for most of the game.
Yeah, the Lakers were locked in defensively. They were executing their game plan, and they just had more energy than the Nuggets. It was a pretty impressive performance.
Speaking of impressive, let's talk about the Trailblazers and the Grizzlies. The Trailblazers winning this one pretty decisively, 115 to 99. What was the key to their success?
Damian Lillard, he was unstoppable in this game. 38 points, hitting shots from everywhere. He was in complete control. And when he's playing like that, the Trailblazers are a legitimate threat.
And it wasn't just Lillard. Jeremy Grant had 22 points, so they had multiple scoring options, which always makes things easier.
Right. Grant's contribution was huge. He took some of the pressure off Lillard, And he was solid defensively, too. For the Grizzlies, Ja Morant had 24 points, but he faced a lot of pressure from the Blazers' defense, and it seemed to affect his efficiency.
Yeah, it's tough for even a player as talented as Morant to carry the load when the other team is firing on all cylinders like the Trailblazers were. They seem to have a good defensive game plan, limiting the Grizzlies' opportunities in the paint.
Yeah, they were really focused on forcing the Grizzlies to take tough outside shots. They were switching effectively on pick and rolls, not giving Morant any easy lanes to the basket. It was a really impressive defensive performance.
All right, last but not least, the Jazz taking care of the Wizards, 128 to 112. What was the story of this game?
This was a demonstration of the Jazz's depth and their consistency. Donovan Mitchell led the way with 34 points, but they had contributions from all over the roster. They're just a very well-balanced team offensively.
And Rudy Gobert doing Rudy Gobert things, 16 rebounds, 4 blocks, anchoring that defense.
Gobert's impact is undeniable. He changes the game defensively, alters shots, protects the rim. It's no coincidence that the Jazz are one of the best defensive teams in the league with him in the middle.
For the Wizards, Bradley Beal had 28 points. Kyle Kuzma had a double-double with 20 and 10, but it wasn't enough to keep up with the Jazz.
No, the Jazz were just too much. They were hitting shots, they were playing tough defense, and they were in control from start to finish. It was a really solid performance.
So there you have it, 5 games, 5 different stories, but all showcasing the incredible talent and competitiveness of the NBA. We saw offensive explosions, we saw nail-biters, we saw dominant performances. It's a league that's constantly evolving, with new stars emerging and new strategies being developed.
And it's a league that rewards both individual brilliance and collective effort. You need those superstar players who can take over games, but you also need that team chemistry, that ability to execute as a unit.
Absolutely. And as you think about all the games we've discussed today, I want you to consider this. Which single player do you think had the biggest impact on their team's outcome? Was it Booker with his clutch shooting for the Suns? Was it Fox leading the Kings down the stretch? Was it LeBron's all-around dominance for the Lakers? Was it Lillard's offensive explosion for the Trailblazers? Or was it Mitchell pacing the Jazz? It's a tough question, but it's a fun one to think about.
It really is. It makes you appreciate the different ways players can contribute to winning basketball.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the NBA. We'll catch you next time for more insights and analysis.
See you then.